Hey guys, Kaz here, and today I'm going to be talking about all the books I read in April. So yeah, first of all, I finished March with a Y the Last Man, and then I started April with another volume. This is volume 6, Girl on Girl. So basically this series is about, at a certain point, just all of the men died, all of the human men and all of the mammals that are male, except Yorick and his pet monkey. They're both male. And this whole series is trying to figure out what the shit is going on, why the men died, but also why these two didn't die. This one, they're on a ship for quite a bit of it, so that's interesting. I can't get too much into the actual storyline, but he has a doctor with him who's trying to figure out what the shit's going on, and also somebody who's like a secret agent type of person. But yeah, in this one we also get some background on his girlfriend. So when this whole thing kicked off, she was in Australia, and she obviously thinks that all the men are dead. She doesn't know that he's alive. So we get some like flashbacks to when it all happened and what she's been doing in Australia, so that's kind of interesting. And yeah, great volume, really enjoying this series. Definitely need to carry it on. I've got the next couple of volumes, so yes. Can I show you the artwork without doing any spoilers? Maybe. We can certainly see. Yeah, it's that sort of paper. It's not the shiny sort of comics, it's the matte sort of comics, and that's the sort of artwork we got in here. So yeah. After that I read volume 1 of Breaklands on my Kindle, my phone, I can't remember, some sort of electronic device because I have it like that. This is a comic that's set, I think it's like 150 years since civilization somehow broke up, destroyed, but obviously people are still existing. But everybody has powers now. Some of them are really like small, some of them are massive. And there's all these different factions everywhere and different people. It's also very Mad Maxy. There's a lot of like vehicles in here that are very reminiscent of Mad Max. And yeah, we have two main characters, a brother and sister, and the sister is like the only person that we know, that she knows, that's ever not had a power. But then her brother has like an insane power, so she's trying to keep him safe. And then guess what? He gets kidnapped right at the beginning, so she's trying to figure out how to get him and trying to save him. And yeah, I really enjoyed this one. I do have the next volume, maybe even the next two, I can't remember, but I've got the other volumes. They're free as well. I can't remember if they're just free or if they're free with Prime, but yeah, definitely need to carry this series on because I really enjoyed it. It was interesting, there was fun powers going on, there was fun vehicles, there was fun fighting. So yeah, very much enjoyed this one. After that, my buddy read of this series, Drowned Wednesday by Garth Nix. Me and Ashley are buddy reading this whole series, and this one is book 3, Wednesday, day 3. This series is like middle grade-y, potentially young YA, young adult, about this kid Arthur who accidentally gets sort of wrapped up into this whole thing. There's this big house and he can go into it and it's just like a whole universe in there, and it's trying to save pieces of a will and also get keys. This is the Keys to the Kingdom series. But yeah, I've been really enjoying this one. The first volume, still talking about comics, the first book in this series, I was kind of like, I quite enjoy it. But as it's been going on, I've been really enjoying it now. You just get straight into the story. Obviously the first one was building up the storyline. But yeah, in this one, it's set at sea, as you can see, Drowned Wednesday. And each of these books, he has to find these different people. Like Drowned Wednesday is a person in here. Mr. Monday was a person in the first one. You know, it goes like that. And yeah, there's just a whole host of different weird and wonderful characters. There's also humour in here. It's quite fun. And lots of magic and fun things going on. So yeah, I really enjoyed this one, and I'm glad that we've been reading these, and I'll be reading the next one this month. After that, I finished The Light Thieves. So this is The Light Thieves and the Terrifying Dawn by Helena Duggan. This is the third and final book in this series, and this one I didn't enjoy as much as the other two, unfortunately. I still very much definitely like recommend this middle grade series. I've not seen anybody talk about it. It's got hardly any like reviews on Goodreads and stuff, so like definitely read it. This last one I didn't think was as strong as the first two though, for a couple of reasons. The main reason, and this might be my adult eyes looking at it, it is a middle grade, but I felt like in this book, so first of all let me give you some context. So in this series, the earth, like there's something happened to the sun, a bit of it has got dark, and then they figured that the earth is tilted on its axis. There's this billionaire who says if everyone comes to this point, the tipping point, we can tip the earth back to the right point. But in the first book we're following this group of kids, and the main character's sister and then granddad disappears, so he's trying to figure out what's going on with them. And then when he gets to the tipping point, it's not as it seems, and you know, billionaires are generally not out for your best interest. And then the series carries on trying to fix the sun, fix the world, trying to figure out what's going on. There's these letters that they're trying to like figure out what they mean. They need to piece these different things together. And in this book, I feel like stuff gets explained like 7 times. In the first 2 books, it was really interesting because like they'd get a letter and then they'd be discussing it, and then a bit later they'd be like, oh yeah, this probably means this. And then it's like, cool, it does. In this one, it feels like they do that, and then like three chapters later, they're like, oh yeah, this must mean what this means. I'm like, you literally already figured that out 3 chapters ago. Why are you acting like this is new information? And then a few chapters after that, they're like, oh yeah, this means this. I'm like, yes, we've discussed this 3 times. It felt like this in this one. I don't know whether the author just like didn't know how to put the information together, whether she didn't have enough information left that they need to figure out in this one, so she had to repeat herself a lot of times. I'm not sure. But one point in here, and this is spoilers, but I'm not going to mention which characters or whatever, but one point in here, in book 2, we find out that a certain character is another certain character's brother, right? And then in this, like in book 2, this is book 3, halfway through this, they're like in a place and there's pictures on the wall, and they see the picture and they're like, wait, that looks like that guy. Oh wow, that guy must be this guy's brother. I mean, we did hear him literally say that, but now we know it for certain. It's like, that's not a eureka moment. And surely even middle grade kids know that in the second book when that was revealed, it was a big reveal, like, oh no way, that dude's brother. Why are we pretending like it's a big reveal in here? They already know that information from a whole book ago. So that's what made this not as good as the other ones. But even so, I really enjoyed this series. I think it's really fun middle grade books, and there's a lot of interesting characters in here. I like all 3 of the main characters. There's a baddie and there's stuff happening, and the reason why stuff's happening I think is really interesting. And also the whole sort of billionaire technology aspect of it is really interesting to read in here, because it's very reminiscent of real life. Like in this book series, there's like watches and the internet and all this different stuff that this guy has created, wink wink nudge nudge, you know what I mean. And they all have, what is it, H, so it's like, oh, I've got my H watch on and we're going into the H museum, like H stuff. It just is very reminiscent to actual real life of like all these tech companies with all of their things, and how they're probably not as nice as they seem or want to make people believe they are. So yeah, still very much enjoyed this series. I still enjoy this book. It just wasn't as good as the other 2, but I'm glad I read them. So we're about halfway through, so let's have a bit of cat contentage and then I'll be back with the last few books. So after that I read Layla and the Blue Fox by Kieran Millward-Hargrave and Tom Liff-Reston doing the artwork. This one I didn't even know existed until like the month before. I was searching for something else. I think I was just searching Kieran Millward-Hargrave in general because I really enjoy her books, and I was like, what other books does she have? And I saw this one, and it's in the same sort of design as Julia and the Shark. This book, which I really enjoyed. I really enjoyed the story, and I really enjoyed just the way it was told physically and visually. So, and obviously this is like, look at it, it's icy, it's that, but also make it polar, so obviously I wanted it. And yeah, this is kind of based on the real life, I don't know if you guys remember, but several years ago there was this fox that went from like one pole to the other. It was in sort of the Norway area, and it went to Canada, just walking across the ice, and it was this big scientific thing. So this is based on that, but also it's like surrounding this family. It's this girl and her mum is a scientist, and they're following this fox on its journey. and I really enjoyed it, and it has the same sort of vibe as Julia and the Shark in the way that it's like created. So Tom DeFreston is Kieran Ward Hargrave's husband, I believe, but also the artist, and the way these books are made are just so nice. So for example, here we have a picture, and then this bit is on like acetone sheet, so you still see through it, and then here's a fox on its journey. So it's just like really nice like that. The visuals is all part of the book, as you can see from the colourful ends here, where they have all these illustrations in and these acetone bits, and it's just like, look at this. Look, they're travelling in the icy weather, and then this is on this, and then it's over here, and it's just so nice. It's just a whole, like, the way you read it is just so nice. But also the story is, it's about this fox, but it's also about family. So our main character Lila, straight away is going to Norway because she lives with her, I think it's her aunt and her cousin, and her mum lives in Norway. They're both from Syria, but she hasn't seen her mum for like many years because they both came to England, but then her mum moved to Norway for this job to have the money, and she feels very distant to her mum. She talks to her on like the phone and via videos, but she hasn't seen her in real life for like several years, and obviously she's only 11, 12, so that's a good portion of her like growing up time. So she's going to Norway to see her mum, and then her mum is this scientist who does all of this studying on this fox. So it's really interesting the way it wields the story together. We're on about obviously the migration of the fox, the environment and stuff, and the ice melting and how they have to go from one to the other. But it's also about migration from certain countries. They're from Syria, they had to leave because it wasn't safe for them there. And then obviously she's in a different environment, her mum's in a different environment, and then she's in Norway and she doesn't understand the language. She's never been there. It's very cold obviously because they're in Tromsø, so it's like very cold northern near the Arctic. So yeah, it's just really interesting. Same with Julia and the Shark. Both of these stories are middle grade. They are about the animal in the story, in the title, but they're also both very much about family, about dynamics. So in this one, Lila doesn't feel close to her mum. She doesn't know how to like interact with her. She feels like her mum cares more about this fox than she does about her. She's got all these different like feelings in her head. Why isn't she close to me? Why has it been this long? How do I talk to her? And it's just really interesting and really well done, and I definitely recommend both this one and Julia and the Shark, because just as a journey of reading it, it's wonderful, but the actual storylines are both very intricate. Even in the middle grade, they talk about a lot of real emotion and stuff. Like that one's also about family dynamics in a different way, but I very much recommend both of them. So after that I read The Absence by Martin Stiff. This is a graphic novel. I'll give you a little quick thing. It's all in black and white like this. There we go, it's all in black and white like this. This one was just a random thing. I bought another book and this was like $1.99 and it was cheaper to get this than to pay postage and packaging. So that's why I got this like a year or two ago. So I didn't know anything about it. So this is set just after the war, and this guy comes back to his village, his home village, and everyone is very weird about it. They all seem to dislike him. They're all very angry. They're like, why did you get to survive and all of our husbands and all these other men from the village don't? So throughout this book they're weaving this whole like, why are people acting like that to him? What's going on? What did he do? What did he not do? But then there's also these other things coming in, like there's a guy that's come in and he's very wealthy and he's building this really weird looking building for some reason. So it's about him and the builders. There's also some flashbacks and stuff, but I feel like the premise of this was interesting, but the execution I feel like could have been better. So I don't really know how much of this would be spoilers, but I feel like people probably won't read this because it's a very random one that I've never even heard of. So I'm going to give some like spoilers in this bit, so just so you know, these are spoilers, because going in you don't really know what's going on. But I'm going to throw this out there. there is stuff to do with, like, it's not magic, but there's this one guy in here that knows how to do the maths to figure out what's going to happen in the future. So that's the thing in here. Somehow, as a kid, he's like, I can mathematically do these equations. Like, you see a little flashback and there's a mirror and he's drawn loads of like circles and stuff on the floor, and he's talking to this dude and he's trying to explain, like, oh yeah, I know how to do the maths and all these equations. And then he smashes the mirror, and then all the pieces from the mirror fit exactly into the bits that he's drawn on the floor. So it's like, I can predict. So he's talking about how he helped predict stuff in the war and stuff like that, and there seems to be a little bit of a connection with him and his like really creepy boss and our main character. And yeah, there's like, I'm not going to spoil that. There is like a twist at the end. I'm not going to spoil that. Obviously I mentioned that bit, but I just feel like the execution of this could have been better. It could have been more interesting. The ending, the twist, I feel could have been explained a bit better. So yeah, I found the premise interesting, but I did give it like a 3 stars because it didn't quite live up to what it could have been. And then last but certainly not least, because it was my favourite book of the month, I read Into Thin Air by Jon Krakauer. This is the book that I've been wanting to read ever since I read Into the Wild by Jon Krakauer. It's a non-fiction. It's about his time going up Mount Everest on a time where there was a lot of casualties, so it was like a really big thing. Obviously people do die on Mount Everest, but at this particular day, like, there was quite a lot of fatalities, and a lot of them were in the group that he was in. So it's his account of that. It's really interesting because Jon Krakauer is, I don't know if he still is, he is alive, but I don't know if he still is a journalist. But at the time he was a journalist, so he was going on this expedition up Mount Everest as a journalist to try and talk about the way that Mount Everest has gone from people that actually climb, trying to do this, to people with a lot of money paying a lot of money to get other people up the Mount Everest so they can say that they've done it. And it's really insightful the way he goes into all these different people. It's like, oh yeah, this person spent 60 grand in 1996, it's a lot of money, to get took up here. And also, like, there's loads of Sherpas. The Sherpas carry everything. They create the path that people are going to go up on Mount Everest. They sort out the food, the drink, the tents, they haul everything. So it's like, is it really something that you can be proud of to say, oh, I got up Mount Everest? Like, obviously it is very, very hard, and that is the reason why a lot of people died, but it also, like, the commodification of doing this, and like the first person to do the first, like, the tallest 7 mountains, I believe, was just somebody that had a lot of money so they could do it, instead of somebody that is actually a climber. But anyway, onto the other side of this. Obviously that was his reason to go up there, to talk about how it's become this big business, these people with a lot of money that will just climb up Mount Everest because they can, because they have the money to pay for it. But on this fateful day, he was with his team and there was a storm, and several people in his team and other teams died because of it. And it was a big tragedy, and the way he talks about it in here is so interesting. So originally there was an article that he wrote, but he brought the book out the year later, going through it more. Obviously he had a certain word count in the article that he had to fit to. There's also some things he got wrong. So for example, he thought he saw one of the guys that died when he was on the mountain. So in his article he mentioned that and thought he might have, like, fallen off the cliff. But then later on, as he was talking to other people that are in different parties, in his parties, and seeing, like, what they saw and their interactions they had, he realised that the person he thought he saw was actually somebody else, because they told the exact same story as he did. So the person that he said had died in a certain place was actually, like, a long way away in a different part of the mountain, because somebody else said they saw him there. So he was, like, apologetic about that, because obviously this guy's family thought he was here but it was up here. But either way, I don't think they ever found his body. Even now, maybe? This was in 1997. But yeah, this was just such a good book. It was so interesting. It was informative. Everything he talks about was really just like, well, I just really enjoy Jon Krakau's writing style. It's just so interesting and engaging. It's non-fiction, but it doesn't feel like you have to slog through it or like it takes a lot of time to read. It's just so good. And also there's one guy in here, Beck Weathers, oh my days. So he's got a book as well. I definitely want to read that. But Beck Weathers, he was this guy, and when the storm hit, he was with several people and they couldn't find their way back to the camp, even though like in reality it wasn't that far away, but they literally couldn't see anything in front of them. They didn't want to accidentally fall off the edge of a mountain. So they huddled in this group. One of them left to get help. They couldn't come back for several hours. They came back and they found Beck Weathers and some other people. I think there was 2 other people with him. And they were breathing, but they were like unresponsive. They had to chip away, I think it was 6 inches of ice from his face. And then that's how they figured out he was still breathing, and so was the woman with him. But they left him because they was like, we can't help him. If we try and save him, we're probably gonna also die because of how hard and extreme these conditions are. And then like the next morning, Jon Krakau opens his tent, is like, sees this person walking towards him, and it's Beck Weathers. He was alive still, even though he was like, had several inches of ice covering his whole body. He was out in the elements for a long time. So they put him in a tent, and obviously he's very bad. He's got frostbite on his face, on his hands, his feet, everywhere. So then like the next morning they're gonna go back down the mountain, and they figure, Beck Weathers, you know, we got him to the tent, but he's probably not gonna make it. And then before he leaves, Jon Krakau goes to the tent, like the tent's fallen over, there's ice on it because it was really windy and it had fallen over. But he was like, I'm not just gonna leave him, I'm gonna go and pay my respects. He opens the tent and Beck's like, finally somebody's here, I've been shouting for 2 hours, and he was still alive again. They left this guy twice because they thought he was dead, and like 99% of the time he would be dead. Like other people were dead in this same situation, but he was just chilling there, literally. He was very cold. It's just madness. I definitely want to read his book. I think it's going to be interesting. But I think he lost his both hands, one hand. He lost his nose, he had to get that grafted back on. I think one of his feet. He was a surgeon as well, which is harsh, but so obviously he needed his hands. But it's just mad what the body can endure sometimes. But there's also a saying like, you're not dead until you're warm and dead. If you're cold and dead, humans can survive. It's a very strange phenomenon. But yeah, there's a lot of interesting stories in here. And there's also a lot of infuriating stories. Like there were these certain groups. There was one group of South Africans that had a radio that worked, and their radio in Jon Krakau's team died, and they wanted to like, oh, can we use your radio to be able to go to base camp and hear and talk between? And they're just like, no, unlucky. There were several accounts of people seeing people and just sort of walking past them, because when you're in this environment, you sort of, it's everyone for himself. Krakau talks about on a lot of mountaineering trips, it's all about trusting the people that you're with, and everybody has got each other's life in their hands. You're like attached by ropes normally to other people, so if someone falls you can catch them and stuff. Whereas on Everest it's very much every man for himself. People don't get attached together. You're attached to like the rope that the Sherpas have put up there, that you can go up in the misses out, or like the scariest parts. But it's like, oh, you're on the floor dying, I can't really do anything about that because I need to get to the top. So yeah, it's very interesting, these different, like the emotional differences you need to be able to just be like, yeah, but I also want to get to the top, so unlucky. But yeah, it was just a really interesting story. I very much recommend it for anybody who's interested in this sort of stuff, or any sort of like expedition-y stuff, or real life stuff. Even if you're into like true crime and stuff, obviously it's not a true crime, but people did die. I just feel like anybody that enjoys non-fiction, and maybe even if you don't, I just feel like you could probably get something out of this book because it's so interesting. The way it's written is so good. And yeah, I will shut up now because I feel like I've been talking about it for ages and probably not even scratched the surface of what I wanted to say. But yes, that was the last book that I read in April. So let me know down below what you read in April, or if you've read any of these, if any sound interesting and you're now intrigued about them. The comment box is there for a reason, so like use it if you want. And do the things if you want, like if you want, subscribe if you want, but only if you want. And yes, I'll be back in a few days. Hopefully, I keep going on about this, I really need to put one of my travel vlogs out, because in like less than 3 weeks I'm going to Prague and I still have 3 backlogs of videos I've not put out. So maybe at some point this month you'll see me go to Berlin, because I feel like that's the one that was most long ago. So yeah, come back for that, I guess. Bye.